'Cause of Lucifer's apostasy from God. When I called miniatures of myself into being, I was motivated to do so by my infinite love, which wanted to give itself away, which wanted to create vessels for itself in order to flow into them. My love demonstrates itself as strength, and this strength wanted to be creatively active, and thus my creations, because my strength flowed into these vessels, likewise had to be creatively active again, for these beings, as images of myself, had the same intrinsic creative urge which impelled the constantly inflowing strength into activity again, because the strength which emanated from me as the primary source of strength constantly created life. And thus you will understand that all beings which had come forth from me were in a state where they knew no restriction in the creation of manifold works, which made them blissfully happy, but that they, like me, were not subjected to any restriction either, for my love was infinite, and thus my strength of love flowed into all beings in order to give them pleasure. Neither did the being's creative activity ever come to a standstill, because my strength had no limitation. It will never spend itself, it will always and forever flow, and thus new creations will eternally arise, just as all my once emanated beings will receive my unlimited strength for creating and shaping as long as they open themselves to me, i.e., as long as they do not resist my illumination of love. And this blissful state truly would never have needed to end, because I, for my part, would never have imposed a restriction on the beings, and thus they never needed to fear a lessening of strength either. And yet a change occurred in the being's greater than blissful state, caused by a situation which the beings considered to be imperfect, the fact that I myself, their God and Creator, was not visible to them as a being like themselves, that they indeed knew of me as their Father from whom they had originated, but because I did not visibly present myself to them they looked at it as a limitation of my perfection. They began to entertain wrong thoughts since they did not openly raise this question with me myself, which I would have answered so that they could have realized and corrected their wrong notion. But they believed they could conceal these inner doubts about my perfection, and yet I knew of them. However, I did not use coercion but gave their thoughts free rein, which they nevertheless misused. For they also recognized the same doubts about my perfection in the first being I had externalized and whose beauty radiated in supreme brilliance. For eternities this being had given me all its love indeed, and in this love it was exceedingly happy and shared my will, even though its will was also free. Yet now and then small doubts arose even in this brightly radiating being because it could not see me either. Nevertheless, time and again its great love for me suppressed the emerging doubts, and it gave itself to me, finding its beatitude in constantly creating same-natured beings by means of its will and the use of my strength. Yet this doubt about me kept emerging, and he, too, did not put it to me, which he could have done. He nourished the doubt so that it became increasingly stronger and reduced his love for me. But thereby he also weakened himself, since his reduced love for me also lessened my flow of love and thus restricted his creative activity as well. Had he been able to see me it would not have been possible for him to turn away from me, yet the fire of my love would have consumed him, for no created being is able to look into the primal fire of my love without ceasing to exist. He knew it, too, because he possessed supremely enlightened awareness, yet he played with the thought to be greater than me because he radiated in brightest light and supremely perfected beauty. He could not imagine any being to exceed him in light and beauty, and therefore he also claimed the right to rule over all created beings, whom he undoubtedly had created, but the strength to do so he had received from me. He now saw his power in the host of the spiritual beings and therefore believed himself able to do without my strength. He believed that he had withdrawn it from me through the creation of the countless beings, and the fact that I did not visibly present myself to him was regarded by him as evidence of my powerlessness. And I did not disillusion him because I had externalized him as a completely free being which I will never ever compel into changing its will and its thinking, even if he keeps his distance from me for eternities. Now my strength met with opposition and resistance, and consequently it remained completely ineffective. And now this, my first created being, is no longer capable of generating any works of creation, yet it believes itself great and powerful because it looks upon the immense number of spiritual beings as his possession, who, like him, had revolted against me and rejected my illumination of love. They, too, are incapable of any activity, because they also moved infinitely far away from me. But it was their free will, which I respect, and thus they will remain distant from me until they voluntarily approach me again and appeal to me for my illumination of love. Even the first created being, my present adversary, will take the path of return to me one day. Sooner or later he, too, will long for my illumination of love again and voluntarily accept it from me, because one day he will give up his resistance, even if it takes an eternity. Yet everything that once emanated by me as strength will inevitably return to the eternal source of strength again. Amen.